Busy evening. Just so you all know, my name is Luci Keesee, and I am a proud Bethel Park graduate. I am also a proud Bethel Park parent. It has really been one of my personal missions to help get CKLA not only into Bethel Park, but into many, many schools in Pennsylvania and all over, because I believe in it so much. I want my daughter to have this experience, and I want our kids in our community to have this experience. So, I'm super excited to be here to share all of this information with you tonight. So I know you're probably thinking like, why change curriculum? Why CKLA in particular, or a curriculum based on science of reading, which we're going to talk about. You may experience it at home when you are with your children. It feels so wonderful. It feels magical when they are learning to read or they're comprehending what they're reading. It feels really great. And we as educators just love that. But what we're finding is if we look at the science behind learning to read, we can actually get kids, all kids, learning to reading much quicker and actually much deeper for that understanding. So I'm very excited that there is one and possibly even two bills passed in legislation now based on the science of reading. This first one has already been passed, and what this says is that all educators in Pennsylvania must be trained in the science of reading. So it is exciting to be a part of a district that is like in the forefront of all of this. So kudos to Bethel Park. But we may be thinking, what is the science of reading? This is a very long definition. I'm going to read it aloud to you just in case you're cooking dinners, you're listening, which is totally fine. But it says the science of reading is a vast interdisciplinary body of scientifically based research about reading and issues related to reading and writing. This research has been conducted over the last 50 decades across the world, and it is derived from thousands of studies conducted in multiple languages. The science of reading has culminated in a preponderance of evidence to inform how proficient reading and writing develop, why some have difficulty, and how we can most effectively assess and teach and therefore improve student outcomes through prevention of and intervention for reading difficulties. This definition comes from the Reading League. So if you are interested in learning more about this, this is a fantastic resource. You can just go ahead and Google the Reading League, and so much information will come to you. There are 2 points from all of this research that I want to hit on today. The first one being that we are born with some innate abilities, while other abilities require explicit instruction and deliberate practice. And reading is one of those, right? Also, that skilled reading requires two essential components: word recognition and language comprehension. So let's go back to that first point of that innate abilities. There are some things that we can just naturally do, right? We can naturally learn to walk, but some things like maybe playing the piano or reading actually require explicit instruction and deliberate practice. And guess what? The work of learning to read is really, really hard. So, in our language, in our English language, we have 44 sounds. And for those 44 sounds, we have 150 different spellings for those sounds. Now, that's a lot, especially when you compare it to other languages. Now, Finnish is a language, there is a 1-to-1 ratio. So you can see how different it is and how difficult it is just to actually learn how to read. Now, the sentence I'm going to show on the screen will show you this. As I read this, I want you to think about the letter team there, IE, and how many different sounds it makes. If you don't believe me, I'll quietly defend my view with this brief sentence. Words don't lie, my friends. So you can see what that IE is doing, so many different things. That's why it's so hard to learn to read. Now, I am not a neuroscientist, but I have read a lot and can explain it in layman's terms here. So here you see a visual of our brain, right? And you can kind of see the different centers. Now, we can naturally identify sounds, right? Like b, at, and you put it all together, bat. We can do that. We can actually even attach a meaning to bat. We can think of a baseball bat or that animal, the bat. But when we are actually attaching the letters to that, it's a completely different process. Look at the visual cortex on the screen. It is its own little island over there. So when our kids are working really hard in phonics, our teachers are actually building that bridge in that brain to connect the speech center and the semantic center to that visual cortex, connecting that speech to print. That is why our kids need that deliberate practice with that explicit instruction. Now, if this is fascinating to you, there's a really great podcast. It's called The Science of Reading. And there's one episode in particular that really dives deep into this. It's back in season 1, episode 12, with Dr. Bruce McCandless, who is a neuroscientist. And he actually goes through this process looking at brain images while kids are learning how to read using different approaches. And he actually is from Pitt, so it's a pretty cool connection there. So check it out if you're interested in that. Let's go back to that other point from the science of reading, that skilled reading requires two components, word recognition and language comprehension. This equation that you see on the screen here is referred to as the simple view of reading. And what that says is that we actually have to be able to look at the words and recognize them, but we need language comprehension to make that meaning. What you see now is what is referred to the reading rope. That takes that simple view of reading and really expands it. So you can now see how much goes into word recognition, how much goes into language comprehension to make a skilled reader. This is where we're going to talk about the design of CKLA. Now, if you have kids in kindergarten through second grade, they have two parts to the program. One of that pieces, it aligns to the language comprehension. The other part of that is our skill strand. That's where all those foundational skills, that's where they're building that bridge in the brain there. Um, Now, our third, fourth, and fifth grade students, you can see here, they're working on these things. They've become fluent readers and they're working on language comprehension, and they have what we call one integrated strand. Now, CKLA is built on a foundation of excellence. And if you want to dive into great results and efficacy we have seen from it, you are welcome to check out any of those to kind of dive a little bit deeper into the program. But it has an intentional design where we are focusing on word recognition and language comprehension to make that skilled reading. I'm going to just back it up so you can show how it works in K2 a little bit. So you can see what our our grades 3-5 students do. So we start with the sounds first approach. We teach those 44 sounds and attach those 150 spellings to it. Like I talk about that sound spelled as a Y in the word myth. We will explicitly teach those. Um, they use that sounds first approach where they say that sound over and over. They attach letters to it. They practice handwriting into it. They've got spelling that connects to all of that. And they have fluency practice in their readers. There's comprehension practice, and the writing is connected to what they're reading about. So if they're reading about critters, they're going to go ahead and write a descriptive paragraph about a critter. They use 100% decodables. This is an image from a very, very old decodable that may look familiar to you all, but decodables have become a long way. Here's a sample of a kindergarten decodable, Sam. And our kids in kindergarten are actually reading chapter books. So these decodables have connected storylines, reoccurring characters, and this is really important for third, fourth, and fifth graders to know that they are starting this practice early, early on. So they learn so many things about Sam, that like Sam's dad is in a jazz band. But in grades K2, these are 100% decodable. So everything that they're reading has been taught to them. Now, for all students, grades kindergarten through fifth grade, they have access to what we call our CKLA hub, where they're going to be able to access their readers. Your third, fourth, and fifth graders can access their readers. They have a vocabulary app that they can access at home and at school to reinforce. Here's a quick video that shows you just a bit about that.
All right, let's jam.
Those videos that they have, they're also going to have access to their readers and their sound library. Our third, fourth, and fifth graders have a really fun vocabulary app that is great practice in vocabulary. Now, that language comprehension side is what's really hard to do, right? We're finding out that background knowledge is really, really important, and we start building that in K2. Now, this little video here is done by Natalie Wexler, who wrote The Knowledge Gap, and it talks about the work that we do in elementary school is really, really important, not only for our elementary school students, but as they grow throughout high school and as they grow even beyond. So take a look at this.
This idea that skills and strategies are more important than building kids' substantive knowledge in the elementary years. The assumption has been that this is the way to boost scores on reading tests. And so what you've got is a real marginalization of anything but reading and math from the curriculum. But if you look at what cognitive scientists know about how reading comprehension works, what's really crucial is how much relevant knowledge the reader has to the text. So it's not that you can never ask a student, what's the main idea of this passage, or can you make an inference? It's a question of what's put in the foreground. There was a famous study called the baseball study, which took a bunch of 7th and 8th graders, and the idea was to see what is more important to reading comprehension. Is it general skill, or is it knowledge of the topic? They divided these kids into 4 groups depending on how well they had done on a standardized reading comprehension test and how much they knew about baseball. They gave them a passage to read about baseball and tested their comprehension of that passage. And they discovered that what really made the difference was knowledge of baseball. And even the quote unquote poor readers who knew a lot about baseball scored significantly better than the quote unquote good readers who did not know about baseball. So knowledge is like Velcro. Kids who start out with more knowledge and vocabulary are in a better position to then absorb and retain even more knowledge and vocabulary because they have a context, they have that other half of the Velcro. And that enables them in turn to read more complex text. But the other kids are falling farther and farther behind every year. They're reading simpler text, and they're also less likely to be able to retain it because they don't have that other half of the Velcro. So what happens is that these gaps grow larger as time goes by. Kids get to high school and suddenly they're expected to read a textbook on world history, and they just don't have the background knowledge. And it's not that they can't learn those things. It's that they have never been taught those things in a way that's likely to stick. And it puts them at a tremendous disadvantage. So if you can start narrowing that gap earlier, if you start building knowledge in elementary school, you're going to get a lot more bang for your buck.
So that is just really, really exciting information. If you're really curious about learning about this background knowledge, and you can check out the Knowledge Gap or this podcast, another one, the Knowledge Matters podcast. I actually go into schools and see what happens when a knowledge building curriculum is implemented. Now, this is what we do really well. We have an intentional knowledge building sequence within CKLA. So you can see the connections throughout. So of course, in language arts class or reading class, where our kids are exposed to literature, but also other things like science and history and arts. And what happens is that over time, the connections build. So, in a couple years when they've had CKLA, our 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders will be exposed to topics in kindergarten, 1st, and 2nd grade. And I'm going to show you that with the topic of astronomy. It's important to know that listening comprehension is really important to actually reading comprehension. And that doesn't equal out till age 13. So it's really, really fascinating and powerful knowing that when we expose our kids just by listening, they're gaining so much information. So if you have a 3rd, 4th, or 5th grader at home that maybe is struggling to read a little bit, and that's very common. That's okay. Know that when you read that aloud to them or they listen to that text, they can still comprehend. And that is really, really important. So just to show you quickly, 1st grade, the things they do is really powerful. Like they go through astronomy, the vocabulary they do, the questions they answer, the writing that they do, right? Connects to what we're going to do in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. So our 3rd graders this year are going to be exposed to an astronomy unit in their language arts class. You can take a look at the vocabulary that they will cover and keep in mind that over time they have built this on from 1st grade. Now, the knowledge they build will be throughout listening and also reading themselves. In the discussion is really, really important. Discussing is really important to comprehending. So the more you talk to your kids at home about what they're learning about helps them to be a better reader and writer. And what is really cool within CKLA is they're writing so much and all the time. So in this astronomy unit, they're going to be writing about astronauts after they read about astronauts. So everything is connected. Now, this is from a neighboring school, Canon Mac. As we all know, they started implementing CKLA last year, and Dr. Toronto, the assistant superintendent, is thrilled, and he's very active on all social media, so you can check him out and talk about the results they're seeing. So this comes from third grade of last year, and if on the left you can see their writing at the beginning of the year, looks like about 3 lines, maybe 2 sentences, and then on the right, that's end of year. And in his little blurb here, he talks about in the past, they taught reading and writing separately. But this year, with this approach, they're just seeing great results because reading and writing is reciprocal. It goes hand in hand. Now, just for your information, be on the lookout for these letters that will be coming home that say, "Hey, parents, hey, this is what we're doing in class, and you know, what's my student going to learn, and what are some things I can talk about at home?" I love receiving these. I hang it up in the fridge, and we kind of talk about it at dinner time, just to kind of give some ideas to keep those conversations going. Um, if you want to learn more about CKLA in general, there is a caregiver hub. The link is at the top there, and we will attach it in a follow-up email with that recording. So you can go ahead and just learn more about Amplify as a caregiver at home. But just so you know, your information coming home will look something like this. It says take home in the top right, and it will be, spelling, it will be grammar, it will be vocabulary, it will be a reread. Anything they're taking home on the right that is like a passage, they've already read that in class. So that is a reread for them. So that is really great for them to continue to do to practice not only being a good reader to read aloud, but also comprehension. And just to show you some fabulous things that have already happened, it's only October in our schools. You can see first grade celebrated flapjacks and flannels after their Tall Tales unit. You can see our fourth grade teachers here kicking off a new unit, and they're medieval. They're all dressed up and ready to go. You can see over here memorial, but this just happened at William Penn. Third graders finished a unit, and they celebrated with playing different games, and you can just see how they're connecting these experiences to what's happening in the classroom, and that's what should be happening. Now, I know we are at time, and I know you still may have questions, which understandably so. Please know that this Google form, I think it's in the chat box already, but you are welcome to ask Amplify specific questions or district specific questions. We are here to support you as we are all learning through this new way. So we really, really appreciate your time, and I'm looking forward to helping you connect throughout this year and over time. So thank you.